Suppose I give you two cubes. One cube is scrambled. And now I tell you to match the scrambled cube to the solved cube. How will you do that? Hey guys, it's me CriticalCubing. This video is going to go over my approach on how I match a scrambled cube on a solved cube with the Roux method, and just go over my thought process and the approach I use. Now there are different methods that you can use for achieving the same, but in this video I'll be using the Roux method. The Roux method steps basically are the first block, which is a block like this that you create on the L side of the cube, and then the second block, which is a block on your right side, similar to the first block that you create on the right side of the cube. After you're done with that, you have to solve the corners, 4 corners on the U layer, and then you have to solve the last edges, which are 4 edges on the U layer and 2 edges on the D layer. So when I'm looking at a scrambled cube, I try to look at a favorable starting position, and this generally includes stuff which I can create easy blocks with. So stuff like this is a good starting position because on a solved cube, these two will be together like this, or even stuff like that or like this. So on a solved cube, these will all be together, so I can use them as a good starting position. And for my first block approach, there are 3 main first block approaches that you can use. One is the DL first approach, where you first insert the DL edge and then you insert pair 1 and then pair 2 like that to create a first block. Otherwise, you also have the square approach, where you first create a square and then you insert the last pair to create your first block. Lastly, you have the lines approach, where you create a line in here, edge line, and you create a corner line on the other side and then put them together for solving the first block. I usually prefer the DL approach and the square approach, and rarely do I go for the lines approach. So for example, in here, I see that going for the square approach will be quite easy because these two will be together on a solved cube and these two will also be together on a solved cube, and I only have to worry about this. So I'll assume this as my first block and I'll just keep the cube on the side and focus on my solved cube. So this is the green and red. So green and red will be at the back, and I need this. And this is the yellow and red. So yellow and red is here. So on a solved cube, I can do U2, Y dot to D, and my this square is matching now. Now I have to get this edge, which is here, and this corner. So now you can either go for the edge first or the corner first. It really depends on what I see first. But in here, fortunately for me, the corner is already here, so I can just simply insert the edge and be done with it. So for the edge, this is here, I need it here. I can just simply move it like this, and then I'm done. So with that, my first block is done. Everything is matching for the first block. Now I start with the second block, and second block has 2 main approaches, where you insert the DL edge first and then solve pair 1 and pair 2. Or you can sort of create a square first approach, where you make this sort of pair together and then you pair it up with the edge connected to the center. Usually I go for the DR first approach. So in here, I look at the DR, and DR is this, which is here. So I'll move it like this. DR to the bottom. And then I look at either of the pair, this pair first or the other pair first. And I see that this corner is at the back in here, and this corner is in here in the front. So if I were to solve this case, right, the corner in here, the white needs to be at the bottom. So I can just keep the white in here and then do R prime U prime R for solving the white at the bottom. So what is the edge that comes along with it? It is the green and yellow. The green and yellow is here. So I can move that to this position, because when I do the R prime U prime R, the edge will need to be in this position, and then it gets inserted at the back. And now I can focus on the edge in the front. So this is the blue and yellow, and this yellow needs to be at the bottom. So this is in here, RU R prime. What's the edge? White and green. White and green is here, but the green needs to be in the front. So this edge will need to be flipped. So what I can do, I can keep it at the bottom like this, and then with the M2, this edge is going to come in here. So I can do an M2 from this angle and then just simply insert like that. And my second block should also be matching by this point. My first block should also not be broken, because if you're beginner to Roux, you might be breaking up your first block, but you have to be careful about that, because if you do break your first block, you have to start from scratch. Now comes the interesting part, the CMLL. And CMLL is the step where I can see people making mistakes, and CFOPpers also don't have that much problem with the Cross F2L, but their last layer becomes problematic for them. So I can see CMLL being a step that people struggle with, but it's actually really easy. The way I approach it is that I try to find what corners are good and what corners are bad. So for example, I see in here, this is the yellow, blue and red corner, and I see it in here. Yellow is on top, that means this corner is good because yellow is facing on the top as well. Then I see this blue and white, and I do not see any other white facing on the top, so I know that this is a bad corner. Then I see orange on the top, and I see orange and blue and white, which is this corner. And the last one is green, and I do not see green on the top. That means these two are bad and these two are good. And if I were to visualize this in my head, I already know what sort of case I have, because there are only a finite amount of cases that have two good corners. Now, to be specific about which case you have, just look at any of these two corners, right? So I'll look at this blue one, blue, white, and this. I see that the white has to be on the top. So this white is in here. And the green also here has to be on the top. On a normal cube, I'll have two yellow stickers in here and then two yellow stickers in here. So I exactly know what case this is. So I can just simply do my U2 and do the algorithm for that. And now I will see that all the corners are good corners. So this is good, this is good. The yellow in this was already good, and now green is also good. Now once I've made sure that all the corners are solved, I assume a buffer corner, which in here is this one, the blue and red and yellow. So I'll do a U prime and assume this corner to be the buffer. Cool. Now what do? We basically look at these two corners, and there are only two cases that you can get at this point. You can either get the Y perm case or the A perm case. And the way you determine it is that if these two corners need to be swapped, right? So this corner needs to come in here and this corner needs to go in there. You have the Y perm. Otherwise, you have the A perm. And in this case, actually, I have the corner solved. But just for fun, I'll set up the Y perm case. So how do you determine if you have the Y perm case or not? Simply look at this corner at the back, right? If the corner on your solved cube is matching with the scramble cube, right? Then you have the Y perm. Because now you have these two matching, that means these two will need to be swapped. So you have the Y perm, and just because two diagonal corners are matching, I know I have the Y perm. But like I had mentioned earlier, you can also have the A perm. And the easy way to determine it is that if this corner does not match, you have the A perm. So I use one algorithm only, the A perm, because if you do not solve your corners on the first go, then you have to do it again. I don't take further time to recognize which A perm it is and prefer doing the A perm twice because A perm execution is fast. So once I'm done with the corners and I have made sure the corners are in proper position, I start solving the edges. And for edges, we have to do LC. But LC is a terrible step now because our usual fast recognition does not work and we have to consciously think about the edges. However, you can bypass and reduce some of the complexities of LC by reducing it to LFE, which stands for last four edges. And this can be an alternative instead of doing LC Roux style. I will show you both the approaches so you can pick what way you want to use. However, for people who have their roots in CFOP, I think it will be easier to use the second approach instead of using the basic vanilla LC that Roux uses. Before we jump into LC, I'll quickly show you the steps of the LC. So LC can be broken down into 3 mini steps. And the first step is edge orientation. And in this step, we convert all the bad edges into good edges. And the next step is solving the UL and UR edges. So the edges, which finally need to be in these two positions, we keep them down in the D layer. Which I can do it like this. Green and blue, yellow pieces will be in these two positions. So I keep them both on the D layer. And then I simply match the greens with greens. And solve everything on the middle slice in the end. So that is the basics of LC. Now, how can we transfer these LC basics to these cubes which do not have a color scheme? Well, we do the same thing we did with the corners. We take two pieces and compare them. And if they match, they are good. And if they do not match, then they are bad. So the first step of starting LC would be to have the center properly oriented. So I have white in here. So I can either have white or yellow on the U layer. So I can simply do an M prime and get the yellow center on the U layer. Next, we have to figure out what the bad edges are and what the good edges are. And like I mentioned earlier, we simply take two cases and compare them. So here I have the white and blue, and the white and blue is here. So these two are matching, meaning this edge is a good edge. Next, we have the orange and white. Orange and white is in here, and this case is flipped, meaning this edge is a bad edge. Next, we have the white and red is in here, and this is also flipped because these two are not matching. So this is a bad edge. And last, we have the yellow and orange is in the D layer. And whenever you have pieces on the D layer, just imagine if you were to do M2, right? Orange comes to the top, meaning for this edge to be a good edge, the orange needs to be on the U layer. But I have yellow here, so this is a bad edge, and I have 3 bad edges on the U layer. And bad edges always comes in pairs, so I will have 4 bad edges instead of having 6 bad edges because I have a good edge in here. This is the green and orange. It is here now, and this case is a match because the orange is facing down towards the D layer. So when I do the M2, this will have the orange on the U layer, meaning this is a good edge. And now since I know that this is a good edge, I don't have to check the last edge because bad edges and good edges always comes in pair, and I have 3 on the U layer, and this is also a good edge, meaning the last one has to be a bad edge. So this gives us the arrow case from the back. So before you actually solve this, you should also take a note of what the UL and UR edges are. So when we are matching cubes, so UL and UR edges are going to be these 2 edges that are here, and this is the blue and then the green and orange. So white and this and the green and orange. For solving the edge orientation case, I can simply do M, U prime, M prime so that this edge stays in the D layer, and then I can insert this blue edge to the D layer like that. With that, I have properly oriented all my edges and they're all good edges now, and you can actually verify it as well. So red is matching, then this orange and yellow is also matching, orange and blue is at the back, matching, and then white and orange, which is also matching. So all of my edges are good now, and I can move on to the next step. The next step is solving the UL and UR edges, and in this step, I take a note of the edge in this position, right? And I take a note of the corners in here. So these corners are this green and then blue and red one. So blue and red one, green is here. So I'll keep these corners at the back in here so that when I do the M2 for moving the UL and UR edges to the U layer, they will be matching with their corresponding corners. And then I do the U prime, and now you should have this side completely solved. So everything is matching. And this side also completely solved. Everything is matching. The only thing that will not match is this M layer, and we will fix that now. The easiest way you can think about the M layer now is to take a note of the position of the pieces that need to go in this D layer. So these pieces are the orange and yellow, and then blue and orange. Now orange and yellow is already in this bottom position, so it's good. But this blue and orange is in here, so this also needs to go in this bottom position. And you should also take a note of what center you need to keep on the U layer. In this case, we have the white center on the U layer, so you want to keep the white center on the U layer, and you don't want this yellow center to be on the U layer. And since in this case I already have this edge in the bottom position, and then also the center is properly oriented, I can simply insert this orange and blue to the bottom position like this, and then fix my corner to the buffer position. And now if I see, my cube should be properly matched and also solved. So everything is matching. First, you want to get the orientation of the centers correct. So red should be in the front, cool. And then I notice the edge in here. This is the yellow and orange, and the yellow and orange is in here. The orange needs to be bottom, D layer, like that. And I'd look at the back, orange and blue. And the orange and blue is here, and the orange should be at the bottom once more. So blue is at the back in here. Now we have reduced the last 6 edges into last 4 edges because we properly inserted the 2 edges at the bottom. So we only have to mess around with the 4 edges on the U layer. And the first thing we do now is again match the edges. And this step is the same as the matching the corner step. You basically look at 2 edges. So here I have the white and red, and I look at the white and red in here. I have the white and red at the back, and I see, does this edge match with this edge? And in this case, they do. So this edge, so white and red is a good edge. Then I move on to the next edge, white and blue. White and blue is here. They are matching. Cool. I have 2 good edges. Then I look at the next edge, orange and white. Where is the orange and white? This is here. The orange and white is also matching. So I have 3 good edges. The last one you don't need to check because bad edges and good edges always comes in pair. And if you have 3 good edges, then the last one also has to be good. However, say you have 2 bad edges. So for example, I have these 2 as the bad edges now. How do you convert them into good edges without messing up the corners? And for this, I use the CFOP algorithm. It's the OL algorithm, and it goes like this: R, U, R prime, U prime, M prime, U, R, U prime, white R prime. And that will convert the two bad edges into good edges while keeping your corners intact. And that is for when the two bad edges are opposite to each other. But you can also have the two bad edges adjacent to you. So now the red is a bad edge and then the orange is a bad edge. So my bad edges are here now. And when you have the bad edges adjacent, I keep them at the back in here. And then I do white R prime, U prime, R, U, M prime, U prime, R prime, U, R. And that will convert your bad edges into good edges. And if you have the 4-flip, instead of learning a new alg, you can just do one alg after the other. Or otherwise you can learn a 4-flip alg as well. It's up to you. But once I have all the edges as good edges, I again go back to my buffer corner. So this was my buffer corner, and this is the buffer corner here. And I make sure the buffer corner is matching with this corner here. And now I see which edge needs to go where. So now you can only have the U-perm, H-perm or Z-perm as your last edges case. And an easy way to determine it is that you compare all the 4 edges with all the 4 edges in here, and if one of the side is matching, then you have a U-perm. Otherwise you have a H-perm or a Z-perm. But in this case it does not match. Red and green are not matching, this and this are not matching, this and this are not matching, and this and this are also not matching. So I either have the H-perm or the Z-perm. Now how do you determine which is which? For H-perm, just try to match the opposites like this. So this and this not matching. So I know that I have the Z-perm. So now that you know you have a Z-perm, how do you actually solve it? Well, I know that Z-perm is going to flip adjacent edges. So I only have to compare the adjacent edges. This edge needs to come in here and this edge needs to go in here. Because on the cube that I'm matching, that is the case. So now since I know I have the Z-perm and I also know which edges needs to be flipped, I simply make the edges come to my Z-perm orientation, which for the algorithm I use is these two back positions in here. And then I do my Z-perm algorithm and again set the cube to my buffer corner, and now I see that the cube is properly matched. And you can check it again. My first block sits matching, my second block is matching, my corners are of course matching, and my edges are also matching. So with that, you have properly matched a scrambled cube on a solved cube. Before I end this video, I want to quickly go over the U-perm and the H-perm case. Like I had mentioned earlier, when you have the U-perm case, one of your edges will be matching. So for example, in this case, I have the blues and blues matching and they are in their correct position, meaning I have the U-perm case. And when you do have the U-perm case, you want to rotate your cube so that the solved edge is in your back position, in the back slot. And then you also do it for this cube. And now you see what edge you have here. This is the red and white. Red and white is here. The red and white has to come in here, meaning this is the UB-perm, because in the UB-perm, this edge comes from this position to this position. Knowing this, I can just quickly do my UB-perm algorithm and my edges will be solved. So now they will be matching with this cube. For the U-perms, the only thing you have to remember is the pattern, like which direction these edges moves. So for the UA-perm, this edge will move here, this will move here, and this will move here. UA-perm, so the red was previously here and now it comes here. For the UB-perm, the pattern is opposite. So now they are clockwise. So this edge will go here, this will come here, and this will come here. And that is the algorithm for it. When you see that you don't have the U-perm, you will either have a H-perm or a Z-perm. So how do you determine if you have a H-perm or not? Like I mentioned earlier, simply look at opposite pieces. According to this cube, the white and orange and the white and red are opposites to each other. So on this cube, I see white and red and white and orange. So these two are opposites and I don't have the U-perm. So I know that this is the H-perm. And that's the algorithm for it. And now everything is solved. And when you don't have the H-perm as well, you will have the Z-perm. Try to find out if you have the U-perm or not first, and then try to find out if you have the H-perm or not. And via the process of elimination, you will have the Z-perm. So yeah, that is how the cycling of the edges goes. Now, which approach should you use? It actually depends on what your strengths are. So if you are good at this algorithmic approach, then sure, go for it. There's no problem with it. But if you are better at the intuitive LC that Roux uses, then you should go for it. So depending on what your strengths are, you should be playing to your strengths and just choose whatever approach you want. I personally use both of them, but I do find the Roux LC approach to be a bit more fun. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Take care guys, and bye.